They dragged the judge from his suburban mansion before sunrise. Then, less than a day later, Sean Diddy Combs walked out of court a free man. Coincidence or choreography? July 2nd was supposed to be just another day in Atlanta's federal courthouse, but by dawn the building was sealed behind barricades. Reporters were shoved half a block back, and the jurors were whisked into a briefing no one would describe on record. Hours later, whispers surfaced. The very judge who held Diddy's fate had been taken into FBI custody during a hush-hush raid. By the next afternoon, without warning, televised feeds, or a single press conference, the jury pronounced Diddy not guilty, and the courtroom fell into a silence so heavy it felt staged. Phones glitched, security footage blinked out, and social media hashtags vanished as fast as they appeared. If justice is meant to be public, why did this trial unfold behind an invisible curtain? Keep watching. We're about to tug on every loose thread.
A courthouse sealed tight. Sunrise on July 2nd painted the Atlanta Federal Courthouse in gold, yet the place felt colder than concrete. Steel barricades boxed in every entrance. Guards in interchangeable suits formed an unbroken wall, and the usual courthouse chatter was swapped for curt nods and finger taps on earpieces. Reporters, bunched behind police tape half a block away, shouted questions that dissolved into the morning haze. Inside, elevators required double-swipe keycards, entire hallways were padlocked, and jurors were hustled through a side door for a so-called emergency briefing no one would describe on the record. Even the marble floors seemed to absorb sound. Footsteps landed and vanished without an echo, as if the building itself had agreed to keep secrets. Outside, pedestrians hurried past, eyes down, sensing instinctively that something wasn't right. And while the courthouse tightened its grip on every shred of information, a convoy of unmarked SUVs rolled toward a quiet suburb, setting the stage for a move so bold it would shake the trial to its core.
The midnight raid. While cameras kept their lenses pinned on the courthouse, the real thunder cracked 15 miles away in an upscale cul-de-sac lined with peach trees and motion-activated sprinklers. At 2:14 a.m., neighbors say a fleet of unmarked SUVs glided to a stop. No sirens, no flashing lights, just the low hum of engines refusing to announce themselves. Plainclothes agents fanned out, faces lit by the blue glow of encrypted radios. According to leaked dispatch logs, they carried a sealed warrant so classified that even the local PD was boxed out. Inside, the presiding judge, long praised for her ironclad decorum, was allegedly escorted from her home in silence, slippers scraping the driveway, a single agent shielding her from porch light glare. No charges were read aloud. No badge numbers exchanged. Within 7 minutes, the convoy vanished back into the pre-dawn dark, as if the street had dreamed the whole thing. Rumors suggest evidence of offshore wire transfers and encrypted chats linking high-profile intermediaries to an unnamed entertainment consortium. Officials refuse to confirm a word, citing operational security. Yet every unanswered question only widens the crack in the narrative. If the judge just disappeared, who exactly would be sitting on the bench come morning, and what strings were already being pulled behind the scenes? Next up, the courtroom doors swing open, and 12 tense jurors step into a spotlight none of them can control.
Jurors under glass. When the courtroom finally filled, the 12 people sworn to decide Diddy's fate looked less like citizens and more like chess pieces someone had placed with gloved hands. Their phones were already locked in tamper-proof bags, their pockets scanned twice for rogue transmitters, and an armed marshal watched every blink. From the gallery, you could see the tension bloom. One juror's nails digging half-moons into his palm, another's heel bobbing a frantic staccato beneath the rail. No whispers, no side glances, just synchronized breathing, as though they'd rehearsed even that. Body language analysts later called it scripted anxiety. Whatever you call it, something shifted the instant the judge's replacement took the bench. The robe was the same, but the eyes were cautious, scanning the panel like a teacher counting heads after a fire drill. Opening arguments rolled past, yet the jurors barely tracked the speakers. They stared straight ahead, expressions fixed, as if listening to an audio feed no one else could hear. By mid-afternoon, a court clerk noted in a sealed memo that juror number 7's hands shook whenever key evidence was displayed, and juror number 3 mouthed the word "stop" before closing her eyes for a full 10 seconds. Still, not a single objection was raised. When deliberations began, security herded the panel through a service corridor, away from cameras, into a windowless chamber wired for total blackout. The door sealed with a digital lock code known only to 2 marshals, both of whom refused to log the sequence. Hours passed. Reporters outside refreshed their live streams in vain. No signal emerged. And when the door finally clicked open, the jurors filed back like sleepwalkers, faces scrubbed of tension, verdict already inked in their collective stare. But the strangest part happened after the gavel fell. Within 24 hours, at least 3 jurors stopped answering phones, their social profiles wiped clean, their apartment buzzers echoing into emptiness. If the people chosen to speak for justice have vanished, who's left to tell us what really happened behind that locked door? Stay with me, because the courthouse security system, the data it stored, and the minutes it conveniently lost are up next, and the gaps in those files speak louder than any witness ever could.
Digital fingerprints deleted. The courthouse brags about 24-hour surveillance, yet the night after deliberations, a 4-minute hole opened in every hallway feed. Same timestamp, same dead air hissing where video should be. Forensic techs later pulled the raw drives and found timestamps overwritten twice. First by an internal admin credential, then by an account that shouldn't exist at all. Whoever reached in knew the system's backbone better than the engineers who built it. It didn't stop there. The evidence vault, a bunker of redundant servers spread across 3 sub-basements, logged a volley of remote logins within that blackout window. Each session tunneled through offshore proxies, copying only 2 directories, financial exhibits, and juror profiles. No other folders touched. 37 seconds later, the same user IDs triggered a global delete command, scrubbing audit trails down to the magnetic residue. One technician swears the erase script carried a digital signature he's seen only in classified government toolkits. Officially, he's on leave and refusing interviews. Next morning, auditors noticed a side effect. Frozen bank accounts belonging to Shell LLCs in Delaware, Nevada, and, oddly, Luxembourg suddenly unfroze, moved $4.7 million in under 10 minutes, then dissolved. Every transfer note was the same 2 words: consulting fee. Regulators can't trace the endpoints. 2 clearinghouses have already declared the data irrecoverable. Meanwhile, hard copy exhibits stored on the 5th-floor chain of custody shelf are missing 5 pages, all from the ledger that mapped alleged payout flows. The sign-out sheet? Still perfectly intact, stamped with the initials of a clerk who swears she was off-site that entire week. People say numbers don't lie, but the truth is they can simply disappear, and when they do, the silence shouts louder than a confession. Because if evidence can vanish without leaving so much as a checksum, how safe are the stories we're told to trust? Up next, the mainstream megaphones that should have blown this story wide open, and the invisible hand that clicked the mute button before a single headline could ignite. The media blackout. You'd think a judge's midnight arrest and a superstar's lightning-fast acquittal would ignite every front page in America. Instead, the morning after the verdict, the big network served 30-second blurbs about routine courtroom proceedings before pivoting to weather updates. Articles that did appear carried the same anemic headline, word for word, then vanished from homepages within hours. Analysts combing website caches later found the pieces buried behind redirects, stamped "Content Retired for Review." Reports suggest editors were handed copy and paste statements and told to keep it brief and move on. Social media fared no better. The hashtag Diddy trial rocketed into the top 10 for exactly 11 minutes before throttling algorithms smothered its reach. Users who tried live streaming outside the courthouse watched their connections drop to 0 viewers, then received automated strikes for coordinated disinformation. Even verified journalists tweeted screenshots of policy violation flags only to delete the evidence after setting account locks. No platform issued a clear reason. Community guideline links led to 404 pages. Meanwhile, bots pumped out calming platitudes about the integrity of federal courts, drowning organic outrage under a tide of synthetic reassurance. The synchronized hush feels less like coincidence and more like crisis management on a national scale. Because if you can mute every megaphone at the flick of a switch, the next logical question is brutal in its simplicity. Who owns the switch? Stick around. Following the money trail may reveal the puppet masters hiding just beyond the blackout. Follow the money, find the puppet masters. Long before the verdict dropped, a river of cash was already flowing beneath the courthouse floorboards. Financial crime analysts tracking the post-trial deletions traced a curious loop. Shell LLCs incorporated in Delaware shuttered after wiring exactly $4.7 million through a Luxembourg clearinghouse the same hour juror profiles were wiped. Every transfer carried the identical memo, consulting fee, and each LLC dissolved within 24 hours, leaving no officers on record. Reports claim the routing numbers converged on a boutique entertainment law firm that quietly represents both Combs-owned subsidiaries and a political PAC that pumped $6 million into 2 swing state campaigns last election cycle. None of the parties have responded to interview requests. Dig deeper, and the ledgers bloom into a web of concert promoters, security contractors, and offshore trusts, all stitched together by one recurring signature. A consultant who, according to lobby disclosures, attended a summer strategy retreat with 2 retired intelligence officials and a half-dozen media-buying executives at a lakeside mansion in June 2025. No agenda was ever published, but leaked guest lists placed that same consultant on the board of a private equity firm that acquired courtroom data management software 6 months before the trial. Coincidence? Critics say the timeline feels less like random overlap and more like a rehearsal. Money in, evidence out, narrative managed. Authorities insist there is no actionable proof of wrongdoing, yet refuse to release the full transaction audit. Paper trails can be torched, but patterns refuse to stay buried. Because when billions in entertainment revenue collide with political influence and classified tech, the question stops being whether strings were pulled and becomes how many hands were on the rope. Next, cracks spread through the legal bedrock. Officials whisper transparency crisis, and the justice system itself starts to buckle under the weight of what it tried to hide.
System at the breaking point. By the week's end, cracks in the marble facade of justice were too wide to caulk. Internal memos, meant only for senior clerks, leaked like water through stone.
warning of imminent reputational collapse if the judge's sealed case file ever saw daylight. Rumors swirled of two associate judges quietly filing early retirement paperwork, their chamber's nameplates swapped before sunrise. Behind closed doors, veteran prosecutors whispered the phrase, "irreversible transparency crisis," a bureaucratic code for, "we just lost control of the story." Whistleblowers began sliding envelopes under newsroom doors, screenshots of scrubbed security logs, snippets of encrypted chats hinting at executive override, fragments of a guidance doc titled Media Containment Protocol v3.1. Every tip landed with the same half-sentence. If this goes public, careers won't be the only thing shattered. Major outlets hesitated, then passed the evidence to legal. Lawyers sent it right back stamped, "too hot, unverifiable." The silence thickened, but the leaks kept coming. Outside that fortress of hush, pressure built into a low, seismic rumble. Civil rights groups joined forces with entertainment industry unions, an odd pairing until you remember both know the price of power unchecked. They filed a petition demanding an independent special counsel, gathering 100,000 e-signatures in 48 hours before the hosting platform buckled under a coordinated bot surge and dropped offline. Activists migrated to mirrored servers, each new domain more encrypted than the last. The petition is still circulating, if you can find it. Meanwhile, analysts drew eerie parallels to the 2024 DHS sting that seized illegal data brokers, and to the Cassie and Ventura civil settlements that surfaced just months before the indictment. Different courtrooms, same pattern. Explosive allegations, sudden non-disclosure walls, evidence sponged clean. One veteran litigator described the Diddy saga as a greatest hits album of every failure the system refuses to admit exists. Inside Congress, scattered calls for hearings fizzled under partisan gridlock, yet aides confirmed closed-door briefings were tense enough to set off building-wide panic alarms. One staffer leaked a single line of testimony. "If daylight touches this, we risk the public concluding the law is an illusion." Translation: the guardians of the system fear the curtain more than whatever monster might be lurking behind it. So here we are. Courts in quiet revolt, media on mute, money trails looping like snakes biting their own tails. The question is no longer whether something went wrong, it's whether the institutions we trust can withstand the shockwave once every hidden thread is yanked into full view. And that brings us to the final reckoning. When justice hides behind blackout curtains, is it still justice or just theater for the powerful? In a moment, we'll connect every missing piece and ask what comes next, because the story isn't over. It's teetering on the edge, ready to fall or to finally break open.
Conclusion: when the lights come back on. So here's where we stand. A courthouse locked down tighter than a vault, then emptied of answers. A federal judge whisked away in the dead of night, her docket sealed from prying eyes. 12 jurors who delivered a bombshell verdict only to melt into digital oblivion. Evidence erased, money rerouted, headlines throttled, and every official microphone left hissing with static. If justice truly thrives in sunlight, why did this trial unfold in pitch-black silence? Maybe the verdict was pure. Maybe the system worked. Yet every missing page, every deleted frame, every vanished witness whispers that someone, somewhere, pulled harder on the strings than the public ever will. The unnerving part? Those same unseen hands aren't done. Leaks still trickle out, encrypted petitions keep surfacing, and the money trail hasn't stopped moving. It's just burrowed deeper. Whether you believe Diddy dodged the charges fair and square or escaped through a back door carved by power, one truth remains. A democracy that can't explain its own courtroom is a story still waiting for an ending.
So stay curious, question the gaps, because the next document drop, the next unsecured server, the next midnight knock might finally swing the spotlight onto every shadow we've chased tonight. And the moment that happens, the real verdict won't come from a jury box. It'll come from all of us, deciding whether to accept the show or demand the truth behind the curtain.